Thank you. I have two questions, one for Dr. Califf and one for Dr. Walensky. I'm going to start first with you, Dr. Califf. Senator Johnson and I sent you a letter earlier this week. You've got an upcoming hearing on cellular tissue and gene therapies through your advisory committee concerning a new muscular dystrophy drug treating the Duchenne's variety of it. Unlike most hearings, this one is being done virtually. It's prohibiting the use of cameras. It's choosing from the patient segment by lottery who can speak up. And diseases like this and many others where it's very progressive, maybe has a short prognosis window, especially when there's something happening on the front that may be promising. Why would you go from the normal format to this, de-emphasizing the patient component of it?
Well, Senator, thanks for the question. The technology obviously is exciting, and this is an advisory committee, not a hearing, so to speak, and it's really following all the same rules that we have for all of our advisory committees. The goal is to have experts to give advice about the assessment of the technology as the company presents its data, and the patients have a chance for their input at the open hearing, but there is a limited amount of time, and so that's why there's a lottery. It's not a deviation from our standard procedure. We're really using our standard procedure.
And how long has that standard procedure been in place then?
Years, as best I know.
Okay.
I was an advisory committee chair 20 years ago.
And you're not reducing the amount of patient participation? It seems
not
like
that I'm aware of, but if...
I think I'd look into that.
And
did you get the letter that we sent to you?
I'm aware of that the letter came in,
okay.
Yes.
I think, I've been at the forefront of a Promising Pathways Act. To me, on some of these diseases that have clinical trials that are working, drugs that are promising, probably shouldn't have the same kind of dynamic as something that has less urgency, where there are at least other treatments out there. Do you view that should be maybe looked at, keeping most of the gold standard that you always refer to, but since a lot of these windows don't surpass more than 3 to 5 years, should there be a little different way of doing it?
We completely agree on that. And in fact, in the user fee agreement that you all approved between us and the industry, we're hiring about 150 people just in this area, additional people to focus on it, because it's exploding right now with biological technology that holds great promise.
Well, that's good to hear, because it's now bipartisan, bicameral on a Promising Pathways Act with Senator Gillibrand from New York, which would address this and codify it. I'll send it to your office, and hopefully we'll get your endorsement on it. Thank you. Dr. Walensky, we've had a conversation several times in the past. Of course, we're lifting the federal vaccine mandate, the public health emergency here on May 11th. I'll not forget easily all the angst that was out in the small business community when we had to put a Congressional Review Act out to make sure you weren't going to force vaccines on employees down to employers of 100 employees. That had more fright when it was in the rearview mirror and it was coming down, and it took the Supreme Court to come in and thwart that bad idea. I'd like to know if that was your recommendation, Dr. Fauci's. It was the Biden administration that did it. Who was going to push forward that was a good idea before we had to come in and intervene with a Congressional Review Act and then get the Supreme Court to weigh in?
Yeah, maybe what I'll say is here we are now in 2023 when we have 96% of people who have protection by one way or another, either prior infection, or by vaccination. At the time, we were seeing our workforce and police departments, first responders who were...
This wasn't that long ago. This was just last year, where you had maybe it won 96%, but when you and I had a conversation, we knew that it ravaged the elderly. And it was clear that it wasn't going much more deeply into the rest of the population. And the trillions of dollars that we spent, and the fact that the economy was shut down for that long, I think that was much slower to react to the real science and maybe not the political science. And I'm just wondering if you and Dr. Fauci and who were the ones that kept pushing forward on that one issue of the vaccine mandate for employees, private employers down to 100 employees.
I can tell you that there's a group of us that advises the president on these presidential proclamations. I will also say that to this day, we know that our bivalent boosters still have 2.7 times the protection against death if you've gotten the bivalent boost than if you haven't. So we still know that these vaccines continue to provide protection for people across all age demographics.
Thank you. And by the way, Dr. Fauci in the last interview said that he would probably never recommend shutting the economy down again for something similar to that. FYI. Thank you.